close to the curb, and there was no fire hydrant by it. There was no signs that say no parking. It wasn't within certain feet of the intersections, which are governed by laws. So I did not see a reason to tow this vehicle because of the very light traffic, and that it was not in violation of any city ordinances or laws.
Well, let me ask you this. How about off the Ratique Parkway with a 55-mile speed limit? I don't see any no parking signs along there anywhere.
If the vehicle had been parked on the parkway as such, and I would have found it, then I would have called the supervisor and explained to him the situation and got his opinion on what to do.
But my question is, are there any no parking signs on off the Ratique?
Not to my knowledge, but I've never really paid attention to see if there were signs on this.
Okay.
I don't think there are, so I'll concede that there probably are not.
How about Barksdale Boulevard? You ever seen any no parking signs along Barksdale Boulevard?
No, sir, but it's a state highway, so it is governed by some state laws.
Well, how about Title 32 of the Highway Code that defines highway as being any street? Did you look at that definition?
No, sir, I did not.
Well, you need to look at the definition sections in Title 32, don't you think? If you're going to make a legal opinion about that?
Yes, sir, I should look at Title 32.
You're not aware that LSARS 32:1 defines highway as being synonymous with street.
That is correct. However, there are actual state laws that specify U.S. highways.
Well, I'm
and
going to
state
object.
highways.
That's him giving us legal opinions. That's not, it's not correct in the first place. But I'd ask you to be responsive to my question. Let's talk about another really busy street in Bossier, Airline Drive. Are you aware of any no parking signs on Airline Drive?
I'm not aware of it, but once again, that is a state highway.
Well, if you found people parking on those streets, you certainly wouldn't leave them parking there, would you?
That is correct because it falls under the laws that governs parking on state highways.
And this street, Walker Road, is one of the few ways of getting onto Arthur Ratique Parkway.
That is correct.
Just because the traffic was light when you were there doesn't mean that 15 minutes later it's not going to be heavy, does it?
That's correct. That's correct.
In fact, I believe you viewed Officer Harden's video, have you not?
No, sir, I have not seen
Have not
Officer
seen
Harden's
it,
video.
but we'll see that later. I would like to file city number 3 into evidence at this time.
That's just the, I thought you'd already done that, so.
No, I identified that never offered. Is there anything else then?
There was no objection, Your Honor.
Excuse me, city 355.
After you finish your report then, and what do you do then at that point?
You didn't service?
You leave the scene,
Yes.
you leave that car sitting there.
Prior to finishing that report, Officer Benjamin had pulled up at one point, and we talked, and after our discussion, then I called the Southside supervisor to explain to him what the situation was with this car, and asked his opinion on what to do.
Why are you seeking all these opinions? Are you concerned about the decision you made?
No, sir, I was not concerned. I chose to do one thing. Officer Benjamin said he would have done another thing. And so I called the supervisor and said, this is what my theory is on this particular car being on the roadway.
Officer Benjamin was patrolling in the same area with you, was he not?
That is correct.
He came up there and saw this scene when you were there working, did he not?
That is correct.
He told you that he thought you should tow the car, didn't he?
He stated that if it was him, that he would tow the vehicle.
And you didn't take Officer Benjamin's advice?
I did not. I told him that particular time of day, because of the very light traffic, that it wasn't a traffic hazard at that time, and because it was in violation of no city ordinances or laws, that I felt it should be left there. And then after Officer Benjamin left, I went ahead and called the supervisor and explained to him what was taking place.
I noticed when Officer Harden pulled up, he didn't call his supervisor, did he?
I cannot say what he did because I'm not privileged to that information.
Well, why were you calling? You call your sergeant every time you're out on the street making a decision to get his opinion about what you're supposed to do?
I do not,
Why did you do it this time?
because this one involved a vehicle that was going to be left on a roadway. That's why I called the supervisor.
So every time you see a vehicle left on the roadway, you're gonna call your supervisor to get his opinion what to do with it?
No, sir, not every time. The circumstances will dictate what I do.
Officer Hawkins, you called your supervisor because you wanted somebody else to share in that decision you had made, didn't you?
No, sir, I called on it because I had one opinion. Officer Benjamin had a second opinion, so I decided to call the supervisor and let the supervisor know the circumstances and let him make the final decision on what to do with that vehicle.
You called him for the same reason that you turned your video on that second time. You wanted somebody else to help you with responsibility for your decision, didn't you?
No, sir, because when I turned on that video, to record this, I had no intentions of calling the supervisor to ask him, should I leave it there or not.
But you said you turned your video on because of things that had happened in the past. I don't know what that meant, but you were worried that someone might question your decision, weren't you? And you wanted to make a video of it.
Yes, I did want to make a video of this because I wanted it to be seen that this was extremely light traffic for that time of day.
Let's talk about that time of day. That was one, I believe, may I see P3, C3, Madam Clerk? I believe this shows that you actually wrapped up this call at 1:30, at 1:31, is that right? 13:30,
That is correct. That's what time that was transmitted over.
and you got there at 13:20, so you were on the scene about 10 minutes, is that right?
That is correct.
And you left.
Correct.
And you left that car there for people coming down off the Raytigue and making left turns onto Walker Road.
That is correct.
And some 1 hour and something later, when Officer Harden pulls up on the scene, that car's still sitting there, isn't it?
That is, I guess, correct. Once again, I'm not privileged to that information.
You mean you're not sure how long it was before Officer Harden got there?
That is correct.
Okay, but at any rate, when he got there, it was still sitting there.
That is correct.
And he hauled it.
Correct.
He had it towed. Now, you talked about the time, 1:30 was when you left there, because you get off at 2 o'clock, right?
That is correct. The shift ends at 2 o'clock.
And if you'd sat there and called a record to tow that car, you'd have probably been there another 45 minutes, wouldn't you?
That is possible.
Okay, so you would have been there after time for you to get off from work. Did that have anything to do with your decision to leave it parked there?
It did not.
It did not. So leaving that car there in that position with that traffic lane blocked, that's the best judgment that you could use that day about what to do with that car.
At that time that I made that decision and a supervisor told me to go ahead and leave it there, yes,
And that was based on what you told him.
that is correct.
And you told him it was out of the traffic flow, didn't you?
I told him that it was in the lane of travel, but up against, close to the curb by the broken white dashed line, in about the halfway point of the traffic island. But no, he was told that it was in the lane of traffic.
Would you be surprised if he denies that you told him that?
No, sir, I would not be surprised.
I find it unusual that in the report you wrote that you mention all these things. Most reports just set out the facts, but in this report that you wrote, you mention all these things in an attempt to justify your decision. Do you normally do that in reports that you write when you go out and investigate a scene or an incident?
When I write reports, I try to put all the facts of the case in them. Yes, sir.
The facts of the case, but you don't list all these reasons trying to bolster your decision that you made for your actions at that time, do you?
Well, normally when I write a report, I don't have to do.
Do you, is my question. Do you do that?
I once again, I put the facts of the incident in there. In this particular situation, I felt that the facts needed to be that where it was parked and that it was not in violation of these particular ordinances or laws.
So in that sense, that report is somewhat unusual for you, is it not?
Yes, I would say that.
And again, wasn't that because you were kind of edgy about the decision you had made?
No, sir, I was just being thorough.
I would like to mark that video at this time. Can you put it back in that jacket? Does it end at that point, or is there more to it?
No, that's the end of that
That's the end
particular
of
one.
it. If you'll put that back in that jacket, I'd like to mark that too. Mr. Chairman, I'm going to mark this at this time. Care to look at that?
I have no objection, Your Honor.
I'm going to put that video in its jacket and mark that jacket as C4. I'm not going to offer it this time because it also has Officer Harden's video, and I want to show that when he testifies. But I believe that's all the questions I have on cross-examination of it. Excuse me, just a moment. That's all the questions I have on cross-examination at this point.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to reserve my questions of Mr. Hawkins to my case in chief.
Mr. Barclay, questions?
You may step down.
Thanks.
Call you next week.